Hi, you're on the Reddit Confessions channel. It was day 12 of sleeping on the far edge of the mattress, the invisible wall between us growing thicker by the hour. At this point, I didn't even bother pretending we might cuddle. That kind of hope had a shelf life, and mine expired somewhere between her latest cold shoulder and the way she flinched when I brushed her arm by accident. She hadn't touched me, hadn't kissed me, hadn't even given me a full sentence that didn't involve the words, ugh, or, can you not? And the worst part? I kept trying. Like a fool. Like a dog tapping its paw on a locked door, convinced it would open if I just stayed long enough. That Thursday morning, I finally cracked. I stood in the kitchen, made her coffee, almond milk, no sugar like always, and slid it across the counter like it was some peace treaty. I was exhausted, mentally and emotionally, but I still hoped. I still had that tiny flame inside me. She picked up the cup, didn't even look at me, and said with a sigh, "Look, I don't want to be mean, but if it's just 5 minutes of your usual sad attempt at intimacy, I'd rather spend it on something useful." Something useful. It echoed in my head like a slap. I stood there, nodding like a coward, pretending it didn't sting while my insides folded in on themselves. I went back to the garage, sat in my old workshop chair, and stared at the wood shavings on the floor. Useless. That's how I felt. 5 minutes of me wasn't worth her time. But the twist didn't come then. Came 3 days later, day 15. I was still sulking around the house, eating cereal for dinner and pretending everything was fine when she popped her head in and chirped, "Hey babe, can you send me $500? There's this retreat thing this weekend, and I need to get away, clear my head." She smiled like nothing was broken, like I hadn't spent 2 weeks being treated like a dented trash can, like 5 minutes of me wasn't beneath her. So I smiled back, and I said, "Better I spend it on something more useful." That smile of hers? Gone. Just gone. Like a candle blown out. She didn't say a word. Just blinked. Once. Twice. And then she left her phone on the table by accident when she stomped off. I never touch her phone. Never have. But something in me, something small and cracked and angry, told me to look. And when I did, I found a message that said, "Can't wait to taste you again. You taste like freedom." That was when I realized this wasn't just distance. This was betrayal. The message on her phone kept blinking on the lock screen like it was taunting me. "Can't wait to taste you again. You taste like freedom." I just stared at it. That one line rearranged every thought in my head. Suddenly, the last 2 weeks made perfect sense. The coldness, the rejection, the fake laughs during her late-night video calls. I wasn't imagining the distance. I was living in it. Now here's the pathetic part. Instead of confronting her right then and there like a normal person, I panicked. I put the phone back exactly where she left it, like a criminal wiping his prints, and went to the bathroom to stare at myself in the mirror. My face looked pale, like I'd seen a ghost. Maybe I had. The ghost of the man I used to be before she started treating me like a piece of worn-out furniture. I didn't sleep that night. I lay in bed while she slept like a baby beside me, probably dreaming about her freedom. I kept wondering who he was. Was he someone from work? One of her old college boyfriends she reconnected with on Facebook? Or worse, someone I knew? The thought of it made my skin crawl. The next day, I did something I never thought I would. I went full detective. I'm talking dumbed-down espionage-level stuff. Checking browser history, scanning receipts in the trash, listening carefully when she talked on speakerphone. It didn't take long to find more. There was a hidden album on her phone. I found it by accident when I noticed her camera roll storage was way too high for someone who doesn't take selfies anymore. It was locked with a code. 4 digits. I tried our anniversary first. Wrong. Her birthday. Wrong. My birthday bingo. What I saw made my stomach drop. There were photos. Not graphic or anything that breaks platform rules, but just enough. Hotel room selfies with rose petals on the bed. A boomerang of champagne glasses clinking, held by a man's hand I didn't recognize. One photo had her biting her lip, wearing lingerie I'd never seen in real life, with a caption that read, "You better make it worth my 5 minutes." It wasn't just betrayal. It was mockery. That line, She'd recycled it. Said it to him, then to me like a punchline. For a moment, I actually felt numb. I sat on the edge of the bathtub with the phone in my hand, staring at the images, wondering how long I had been the punchline of their private joke. And yet, I didn't scream, didn't throw anything. I just sat there thinking, what now? Because here's the thing they don't tell you. When you catch someone cheating, it doesn't always explode. Sometimes it implodes slowly, quietly, painfully. I placed her phone back exactly where I found it and acted like nothing happened. That entire day, I was a ghost floating through my own life. She noticed. You okay? She asked once, like she suddenly cared. I nodded. Just tired, I said. It wasn't a lie. I was tired. Tired of begging to be noticed. Tired of being backup. But I wasn't done yet. That night, after she fell asleep, I made a decision. Not out of anger. Out of something colder. I was going to give her what she asked for. Freedom. The morning after discovering those photos, I didn't leave the house. I sat in my workshop, staring at a piece of walnut I'd been meaning to turn into a coffee table for months. My hands knew what to do, but my brain was somewhere else. Flashing back to every red flag I'd waved off like a fool. Like the sudden girl trips with no photos, the perfume she didn't wear for me, and the way she always kept her phone upside down during dinner. I'd seen it all and convinced myself it was nothing. Because loving someone sometimes means lying to yourself so well, you forget it's a lie. Delaney left around noon, said she had a dentist appointment. I nodded and smiled, and the moment her car pulled out, I grabbed the spare key to her old storage unit, the one she said she barely used anymore. I'd only been there once when we were moving years ago, but I had a hunch. The place was only 10 minutes away, but I swear it felt like a drive into some alternate reality. The air inside was thick with dust and secrets. At first glance, it looked like she'd just dumped old boxes and gym gear. But behind one of the storage crates was a suitcase, modern, sleek, and definitely used. Inside were clothes I'd never seen before, heels too high for her office job, and a small velvet pouch that held hotel keycards from different places. For different hotels. For different cities. And a receipt. One that nearly knocked the air out of me. A dinner bill from a fancy rooftop restaurant in Chicago, dated exactly 3 months ago. During the same weekend, she told me she was attending her company's regional workshop in Albany. I remember that weekend. I made her favorite chicken pasta the night before she left. She barely touched it. I stood there in that dusty little unit, holding the proof in my hands, and I didn't feel angry. I felt hollow. Like whatever was left of me had finally fallen out of the cracks she'd been chiseling into me for years. But here's the wildest part. I still didn't confront her. Because I knew Delaney. If I came at her with evidence, she'd turn it around. She'd cry, claim I invaded her privacy, accuse me of being controlling. No, this had to be different. I wasn't going to beg for truth from someone who had already rewritten the script behind my back. So I started planning. Quietly. First, I made copies of the receipt, the photos, even the messages I'd screenshotted while pretending to scroll through Instagram on her phone. I emailed it all to a separate account I created under a fake name. Then I logged into our joint bank account and checked how much she'd withdrawn in the past 6 months. Over $3,000. Labeled as travel, self-care, and client dinners. Every lie had a price tag. That night, she came home like nothing was wrong. Gave me a lazy hug, complained about traffic, and went to shower. I just nodded, playing along. But inside, I was already gone. What she didn't know was that I had already started making changes to the bank accounts. I had spoken with a friend of mine, a lawyer who owed me a favor. I asked about the prenup she'd once laughed off as paranoid paperwork. Turns out it wasn't so funny now. And neither was what I planned to do next. I didn't eat dinner with her that night. I told her I wasn't feeling well, and that was partially true. My stomach was tight the whole evening, not from nerves exactly, but from the weight of finally knowing. She sat across the room, scrolling on her phone, laughing at something she didn't share with me. I watched her laugh, wondering if she ever faked that too. Wondering if she'd ever laughed like that with me and meant it. I used to know that laugh. Now it sounded like a stranger's ringtone. The next morning, she left early. Something about a sales meeting 2 towns over. I didn't ask questions. I just helped zip up her suitcase and kissed her on the cheek. My hands were steady, but inside, I was boiling. Not from rage. From clarity. The moment she drove off, I got to work. I started with the bank. Quietly moved a chunk of my personal savings into a new account she didn't know about. The joint account stayed intact for now. I needed it to look normal. I wasn't trying to burn the bridge. I was digging a tunnel under it. Then I made calls. To my lawyer friend again. To a locksmith. Even to my cousin Travis, who owns a moving company. Don't ask, I told him. I'll explain everything later. I just need your guys to be ready, fast and quiet. That night, I didn't sleep much. Instead, I stayed up reviewing everything I'd collected. Screenshots, receipts, audio recordings from our Nest device I'd long forgotten about. Turns out, it captured a few late-night calls she made when she thought I was asleep in the other room. Her voice was soft, girlish in a way she never spoke to me anymore. She giggled. She said things like, "I feel alive again." And then, "No, he's clueless. I mean, he's sweet, but dull. I feel like I'm babysitting my husband." Babysitting. That was the word that lit the fuse. The next day, I acted like everything was fine. I brought her coffee in bed, smiled while she flipped through emails, even offered to gas up her car. "You've been working so hard," I said. She didn't look up. "Thanks, babe. You're the best." I almost laughed. She left for another overnight client meeting. It was the third in 2 weeks. By now, I could set my watch by her lies. I gave her 2 hours to get settled wherever she really was. Then I put my plan in motion. Travis's crew showed up right on time. 3 guys with a truck, no questions asked. I had already boxed most of my important stuff. Tools, documents, family heirlooms from my parents' attic. The rest? I left it behind. Clothes, dishes, the paintings she picked out without asking me. She could keep the shell. Then I changed the locks. Had the locksmith rekey both doors and disable her remote garage opener. I'd already canceled the utilities in my name. Even the Wi-Fi would be shut off in 2 days. I left a single envelope on the dining table, labeled with her name in my neatest handwriting. Inside was a printed email I sent to her work address, containing all the evidence. No accusations, just screenshots, dates, details, and a note that said, "Since you found something more useful than 5 minutes with me, I figured I'd stop wasting mine." No insults, no drama, just truth. Then I left, not for a hotel, for the cabin my grandfather left me up in the hills. Off-grid, quiet, and more mine than anything had felt in years. The drive there was silent. I didn't play music. I didn't call anyone. I didn't cry. I thought I would, but there was nothing left in me but resolve. But the peace didn't last, because the next morning, my phone exploded with messages. From her sister, from her boss. Apparently, Delaney's little affair wasn't so secret after all. And what came next? It blew everything wide open. The first message hit my phone at 6:13 a.m. Sharp. Just her name flashing across the screen. Delaney. I didn't open it. But then came another. And another. 15 messages in 2 minutes. And a call right after. I ignored them all. Heart pounding even though I told myself I didn't care anymore. The notifications didn't stop. My phone buzzed like a wasp nest. I finally turned it off and went outside, into the crisp mountain air. For the first time in weeks, I breathed deep. No sound of her laughter that wasn't for me. No smell of her perfume mixed with lies. Just trees, wind, and silence that didn't feel cruel. But peace doesn't last when your past refuses to die quietly. Around noon, I drove into town to grab groceries and used the cafe Wi-Fi to check my email. I wasn't ready for what I saw. Not just more messages from her, but one from her boss. A man I'd never spoken to in my life. Subject line, "Urgent. Please call me." The email was short. Professional. Too professional. "Milton, I believe you and I need to have a conversation. I'm aware of some recent revelations regarding Delaney, and I'd appreciate a call when possible. Thank you." I froze. For a second, I couldn't move. What revelations? What did he know? I dialed the number listed in his signature block, half expecting him to yell or hang up. But he answered calmly, like he'd been waiting. "Milton," he said. "I'm sorry to bother you. I know this is personal, but I thought you should know that Delaney's been let go from the company." "What?" I barely got the word out. There were issues, conflicts of interest, discrepancies in expense reports. And after reviewing certain photos and communications that were leaked, he paused, choosing his words carefully. "Let's just say it's best we part ways professionally. I didn't leak anything, but she must have shown him something, or maybe someone else did." Either way, I hung up with more questions than answers. As I left the cafe, my phone, now back online, rang again. It was Delaney, and this time I answered. She didn't yell, didn't cry. Her voice was quiet, too quiet. "I got fired," she said. I said nothing. "I don't know what you told them, but they had everything. My expense history, hotel receipts, even messages I deleted." "Milton, what did you do?" I almost laughed. "I gave you freedom. That's what you wanted, right?" There was a pause. I could hear her breathing, could picture her pacing the kitchen barefoot, probably still in that silk robe she wore when she asked me for money like I was her sponsor, not her husband. "You humiliated me," she said finally. I stared out at the hills, wind tugging at my jacket. "No," I said. "You did that yourself. I just gave the mirror a good wipe." She hung up, just like that, but the fallout had only just begun. That night, her sister messaged me on Facebook, someone I'd barely spoken to in years. She told me Delaney was a mess, said she was staying with their mom now, that she hadn't stopped crying, that she said she lost the only good thing in her life. And I'll admit, for a moment it stung, because I was a good thing. I was steady, loyal, boring maybe, but I never lied, never wandered. I gave her everything I had, and when that wasn't enough, she found someone who made her feel alive. Well, congratulations. Now she was alive and alone. But this story isn't over yet, because what I found the next morning changed everything. I woke up in the cabin the next morning, early light pouring through the wooden blinds. It was quiet, but the kind of quiet that hums with tension, like the forest was holding its breath. I made coffee and stepped out onto the porch, hoping the peace would stick. But when I checked my email, one new message changed everything. It was from a name I didn't recognize, Mark Jennings. The subject line, "You don't know me, but I think we both know Delaney." First, I almost deleted it. Spam, maybe, or some dramatic stunt from her burner accounts. But something made me open it. What I read didn't just throw fuel on the fire, it burned the whole foundation down. Mark introduced himself as a regional sales manager from a neighboring state. Said he met Delaney at a conference a little over a year ago. Claimed they had a thing, casual at first. He said she told him she was in an emotionally dead marriage with a man who didn't even like to touch her. I almost choked on my coffee. But then it got worse. Mark didn't write to gloat or justify. He wrote because Delaney apparently lied to him too. She told him we were separated. Told him she was only staying with me for financial stability until her bonus came through. She told him she'd leave me by the end of the year. He even believed her. Said he spent weekends traveling to see her when she claimed she was on work trips. He only realized she was still living with me after stumbling across my LinkedIn profile 2 weeks ago, with a photo of us, smiling together at a charity event I'd been dragged to. That's when he backed off, ghosted her, and she went ballistic, called him 20 times, left voicemails crying, then threatening to ruin him for leading her on. He sent me audio files. I listened to every one of them on a loop, like trying to decode a foreign language that used to be my wife's voice. And then came the final line of his email. "I'm sorry, man. I didn't know. I just thought you deserved the whole truth because I sure didn't get it either." I sat there, staring at the screen, the forest suddenly feeling smaller. She wasn't just unfaithful. She was a full-blown con artist of emotion, customizing her lies for each man, playing roles like she was auditioning for an award. I wasn't Milton, her husband. I was a plot device in her act. a source of comfort, an ATM, a fallback plan. For a moment, I wanted to call her. Scream, curse, ask how many more there were. But I didn't, because I already knew the answer. One was too many. More than one. That just confirmed what my gut had whispered for years. That I'd been living in someone else's fantasy while ignoring my own nightmare. So instead, I sent one message. Not to her. To Mark. I thanked him. Not sarcastically. Genuinely. Because for the first time in all this, someone else looked into her smiling mask and saw the same monster hiding underneath. And that gave me peace. But peace is a fragile thing. Because that night, while I was watching the sun bleed out over the hills, I got a call from my neighbor back home. He said there was a car parked outside my house. And Delaney, she was sitting on the porch, crying, waiting. I didn't go back immediately. I sat in that cabin, staring at my phone, listening to my neighbor's voice repeat the same words. She's here, Milton. She's been sitting there for hours. I asked if she said anything. He said no. Just sat there on the porch steps, knees tucked to her chest, like some stray waiting for someone to open the door. Part of me wanted to tell him to call the cops. The other part, well, that part still hadn't burned out completely. The next morning, I drove home. It was early, the sun barely up, and as I turned down our street, I saw her car still parked out front, half covered in frost. She was curled up in a blanket on the porch swing, clutching a thermos. Her eyes were red, no makeup, hair in a messy bun. The version of her I used to see on lazy Sundays, before the lies crept in. She stood when she saw me, not with confidence, with desperation. I didn't know where else to go, she said. I didn't speak, just unlocked the front door, walked inside, and left it open behind me. She followed, slowly, like she knew she was entering someone else's house now. She sat at the edge of the couch while I made coffee. Same routine as always, but this time, it felt like a ceremony. A last supper between strangers. I didn't mean for any of this to happen, she started. I let out a breath through my nose. You didn't mean to get caught, Delaney. She looked down, silent. For a moment, I thought she might try to lie again, twist the narrative. But what she did next surprised me. She confessed. All of it. She told me about Mark. About another guy from Portland. About the hotel bills, the fake conferences, the photos. She said she felt invisible. Like I didn't see her anymore. Said she chased attention because she thought it meant value. That every time I folded her laundry or made her coffee, it reminded her she didn't deserve kindness. So she sought chaos instead. She cried while she talked. Real tears. The kind I hadn't seen in years. I ruined everything, she whispered. I nodded. Yeah, you did. She reached out, fingers trembling, like she thought maybe a touch could fix what words never could. I stepped back. No, I said. You don't get to reach for me now. Her face crumpled, but I didn't move. I had spent so long shrinking for her, bending, folding myself into shapes that made her more comfortable. And I was done. I didn't come here to beg, she said. I came to say I'm sorry. For real. I understand if you hate me. I don't hate you, I replied. That's the worst part. She looked up, confused. If I hated you, I'd be done. But I still feel something. And that makes this so much harder. Because now, I have to learn how to let go of a version of you that never actually existed. She stayed for an hour. We talked. Or rather, she talked and I listened. When she left, she asked if there was any chance, any version of the future where we could fix it. I told her the truth. Maybe there was once. But you didn't just walk away from me. You buried me. And now that you're ready to dig, you expect to find the same man still waiting. She didn't respond. She just nodded, turned, and walked to her car. But before she drove off, she rolled down the window and said, I know I don't deserve to ask, but could you meet me next week? Just to talk one last time? I didn't say yes. I didn't say no. But part of me was already thinking about it. And that terrified me more than anything. A week passed after Delaney drove off. She didn't message again. No calls. No emails. Just silence. And I'll admit, At first, the quiet scared me. I'd gotten so used to the chaos. It felt unnatural not to be bracing for the next emotional hit. But every day, that silence grew softer, like a bruise fading until it's just skin again. When the day came that she'd asked to meet, I didn't go. Instead, I wrote her a letter. Not for her, for me. I wrote that I forgave her. Not because she asked for it. Not because she earned it. But because I refused to carry the weight of her choices into my future. I told her I hoped she'd figure herself out, rebuild honestly, and treat the next person in her life with the care I never got. I ended it with the truth I hadn't spoken out loud until then. You were my love story once. But I finally realized I deserved to be the main character in my own life. I never sent the letter. I burned it, because some things aren't meant to be revisited. It's been 3 months now. I still live in the cabin. I started building furniture again. Not for money, just for peace. I sold the house we shared. Gave her the furniture, the decor, all the things she picked. Let her keep the pieces of a life that no longer fit me. And last week, something small but important happened. I laughed. Not the forced chuckle I used to give when she rolled her eyes at me. A real laugh. The kind that comes when you're sitting in the sun, drinking terrible gas station coffee, watching a squirrel fall off a bird feeder and pretend it meant to do that. It reminded me that I'm still here. A little bruised. A little wiser. But still standing. Still worth more than 5 minutes. So, if you're watching this and you're in that dark place, wondering if you should stay, wondering if you're being too sensitive, wondering if the problem is you, let this be your sign. You are not the problem. You are just someone who deserves more than silence, more than lies, more than "I'm tired and not tonight." You deserve someone who chooses you in the quiet moments, who doesn't treat love like a chore or a negotiation. And if you don't have that right now, then start by choosing yourself. Thanks for watching the full story on Reddit Confessions. Now we want to hear from you. What's a historical event or personal story that taught you the importance of self-worth or walking away? Drop it in the comments. We read everyone. Until next time, take care of yourselves, and never settle for being someone's second choice.